Hi everyone, welcome to Between the Bags and Boards. I'm Matt.
And I'm Kurt, and in this video we're going to be looking at the creator-owned comic Manhattan Projects, issue number 7. It's written by Jonathan Hickman, and the art is done by Rick Pitara. The basic premise of this series, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, questions what if the famous Manhattan Projects program's development of the atomic bomb was only the tip of the iceberg? What if there were more sinister and potent projects that we just weren't aware of, hidden to the public eye? And part sci-fi, part alternate history fiction, the Manhattan Project series, it's like a conspiracy theorist's wet dream, with shadow governments, alien cover-ups, and space-bending technology. The cast itself is an intriguing crew based on some of the most prominent scientists and leaders of the 20th century. They have Oppenheimer, Einstein, Feynman, Fermi, von Braun. They even have FDR as one of the main characters. However, keep in mind, these aren't exactly the same as those people you find in your history or science textbooks. Hickman has made some key changes. For example, the Einstein in the Manhattan Projects is not the familiar Albert Einstein, but Albrecht Einstein, a less intelligent drunk from an alternate dimension. You can find parts of the backstory for most of these characters within the first 6 issues of this series, and for those of you who haven't read these yet, I urge you, go back and do so now. They make a very enjoyable and smart read. Alright, so the most recent issue focuses on the secret meeting between the Manhattan Project's crew and their Soviet analog Star City. This meeting was teased at the end of the previous issue. Von Braun, Oppenheimer, and Leslie Groves, the military head honcho overseeing the American group, attempt to convince the Soviets that there is a far bigger threat to mankind: aliens. Using Theodore Roosevelt's famous analogy of walk softly and carry a big stick, Oppenheimer and Groves are able to convey to the Soviets that though they are asking for a joint effort, they have the means to force cooperation between the two programs. They threaten to use their wormhole technology to transport any of their 20 atomic bombs to wherever they please. As in the middle of the Kremlin, per se. Eventually, an agreement best articulated by the world's first space dog is reached. As a show of good faith, the Manhattan Projects program shares the Tory Gate technology originally stolen from the Japanese back in the first issue with the Russians. Powered by death Buddhists, who apparently just keep dying, the gates create a link between the Soviet Star City and various Manhattan Projects labs. Meanwhile, the sudden departure of the U.S. most well-funded science program does not go unnoticed. As the War Department is emptied by Fermi and Daghlian, they are accosted by military troops. Fermi, once attacked, transforms into a hideous creature reminiscent of a praying mantis and makes quick work of the forces. News of this attack and of other labs disappearing reaches President Truman in the middle of a Freemasonic orgy. Sounds fun. But President Truman seems not to be the only president the Manhattan Project's crew needs to watch out for. As Einstein and Feynman admire the joint efforts of the Russians and Americans constructing what seems to be a spacecraft, the artificial intelligence of FDR looks down upon the duo in obvious disdain. This issue ends with Einstein musing about the repercussions of going against those with power, against the kings, the dictators, and the presidents of the world. Alright, so what did you think of this issue, and I guess the series as a whole?
I actually like it a lot. It's really interesting to see these historical characters kind of in a new role.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We brought up the fact that Truman is a Freemason, but there's also Daghlian. We briefly touched on him before. Historically, he was one of the scientists in the Manhattan Project, but he died from irradiation.
Right.
And in this, he's still living on, and I think he's almost immortal now. I think they said he has the half-life of plutonium, essentially.
Right. So it's kind of cool to have that new twist on history.
Yeah, definitely.
I really liked about this issue is we finally get to see East meet West. The Soviet Star City is finally meeting the Manhattan Projects, and they decide to team up and essentially go rogue, which is very cool.
Yeah. So going back to the scientists, in this issue we see Fermi change into this creature. Do you think he's an alien? Do you think he's a
I'm
lab experiment? What, you got any thoughts on this?
I'm
Because
pretty sure he's an alien, but I can't be 100% sure. I guess.
I see. If he's an alien, I feel that in the past issues they've had encounters with aliens, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I would have thought that he would have had more of a role in those issues.
Well, maybe he's playing a longer game because in previous issues where we've seen aliens, we've seen there's multiple factions of aliens within our galaxy. So he could be playing a longer game, saying,
So
humanity could be a major player in the future. So I may get them on my race's side.
Are you saying that? Do you think the other scientists know that he's an alien? Because clearly now Doglia knows, but do the others know, or do you think everyone knows, but they're just like, he's the friendly alien?
Yeah, either that or they just don't care. I mean, most of the scientists seem to be pretty self-absorbed anyways.
Very true, especially Feynman.
Yeah.
um,
What do you think of like FDR as kind of the AI in this? I mean, he seemed to be one of the people against this whole team up.
yeah, it's hinted that he's completely against it, and it always brings up the issue of AI,
Well, I don't know if it's so much as AI turning against it, or the fact that he's a rich person turning against it. I just think it's the fact that he was such a patriot. He was a president, and he probably doesn't like the idea of teaming up with the enemy. That's just my opinion, though.
So the question then becomes, as an AI, does he retain his patriotic feelings? Is that possible?
I think to a certain extent it is, and that's kind of where the story will come in. Like how much of his humanity is actually left.
All right. Well, whenever there's a question of AI, I can't help but think of Battlestar Galactica and Cylons.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So is he gonna be like a boomer or one of the other Cylons?
Yeah. I guess time will tell. But I'm looking forward to how much control do you think he actually has? He's just a computer. What is he gonna do?
I think
It's not like he controls. He doesn't have a body. He's just this giant screen.
could take control of all the computers of the Manhattan Projects potentially.
But do they have many computers running? I mean, at this point.
Only time will tell.
All right. True. Very
So,
true.
One part I really liked about this issue was them hinting actually towards the next issue, where they're saying now that the Manhattan Projects and Star City have broken away from the government, the people with real power, the super wealthy, like almost like an aristocracy, they're gonna come after them. What do you think of this? Who do you think they'll be?
Maybe it's just gonna be the Freemasons. All these Freemasons from around the world, all these people having orgies, they're gonna stop having orgies and come after them.
I think that would be cool. I would also think it would be very cool if they actually come up with specific characters who are coming after them. Also, potentially historic characters like a Rockefeller or something like that would be pretty interesting.
Oh, okay, I see where you're going with this. That would be like it's almost like Assassin's Creed in that it'll have.
Yeah, just new twists on historical characters.
Yeah.
So, as a grade, what would you give this issue?
I give it a 4.5. It was a lot of talking heads, but I like the historical aspect of what they're doing, and it was interesting finally seeing Soviet Russia finally involved a little bit more.
I'd give this one a 4. It's just because I like seeing East meet West, but I'm probably looking forward to the next issue more.
Definitely. All right, so this has been wrapping this issue of Between the Bags and Boards, and look out for our new issues coming out later this week, and for those coming out the following week. If you have specific comics you want us to review, leave a comment, and we'll see what we can do.
Our Twitter and email are in the description below.
All right.